Today you should have seen me. I went to Barnes & Noble again. I went there kind of with the idea that I would be working on Stormcloud again. Like at the beginning of January, I sent out a few query letters for Stormcloud because I rewrote the query letter. And it was the first time that I'd written this query letter, and I actually really liked the query letter. And I actually thought it was good. I didn't think it was overcomplicated or explaining too much or not explaining enough. Like, I thought it was a very good, simple query letter, you know? And so I sent it out to 5 agents. One of them immediately got back to me and was like, this is not for me, but you should send it to this other agent at our agency and let her know that I sent you. So I sent it to the other agent. The new agent didn't get back to me until a couple weeks later. And that's when she was like, sorry for the late response, or sorry for missing your email or something, but please send me the full. So, you know, she wanted me to send her the full manuscript as opposed to just the 10 pages in the query letter that I'd sent her. So I got kind of quietly excited about that. And by that, I just mean like I was excited, but I didn't want to, I guess, get, what's the word? What's the phrase? I didn't want to get too excited and then have it be worth nothing. And so, you know, I sent her the full. And then, you know, I was waiting, and I started obsessively checking my email like all the time, waiting for her response to come in. And it came in, maybe it was yesterday? Yeah, yesterday morning I woke up, and I have this bad habit of grabbing my phone as soon as I wake up. So I looked at my email, and I see her name, and already from the little preview that the email app gives you of the message, I saw the word appreciate, and I was like, she said no. And I knew, like, I just saw that word and I just knew in my head that she was not accepting it. And so I read the email, and it was very brief. It was almost like a form rejection, you know, but maybe she just put my name in it and put the name of my book in it. Like, oh, I so appreciate the opportunity for getting to read this, but it's not working, it's not appropriate for my list at this time. And on one hand, I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. That's, you know, that's her rights, you know, she doesn't have to accept my book, that's fine. But on the other hand, I was like expecting some sort of feedback. And I know that you don't submit to agents for the purpose of getting feedback, but I thought that at least because she read, I mean, I assume she read the whole manuscript, but she probably, I mean, who knows, maybe she just read a little bit of it. Even though she asked for the full, doesn't mean she necessarily read the whole thing. In the days leading up to sending her this, I kept thinking, okay, if she says yes, then I'll keep Stormcloud as is, or go according to her suggested changes. If she says no, then here are some ways that I could change Stormcloud. And I had this page called Saisei. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it means rebirth in Japanese. Basically, it's my way of giving Stormcloud a sort of renaissance, like giving it a chance to become reborn in this new way. You know, it's like a revision. That's what I was intending to work on today at Barnes & Noble, long story short. And I worked on that for like a few minutes. I read through my list and I kind of fleshed out one of the ideas. And I realized now I didn't even completely do that, you know, because I got sidetracked by this other idea that I had earlier today. And I was like, oh, I should work on that at Barnes & Noble. I should at least write it down. And so I wrote it down. And next thing you know, I had been at Barnes & Noble for, I think I was only there for like 3 hours, 3.5 hours. But it felt like so much longer because like the entire time, like once I had this idea, I just could not stop typing. And 3,700 words later, I decided to leave the Barnes & Noble. I was like, okay, it's time to go home. I kind of got to that point where I feel like I've written all that I can of this story, but it ended up really being more of like a personal essay. It was supposed to be this sort of thing that was part fiction, part reality. So I guess somewhere between fiction and nonfiction. Like it takes elements of both. You know, it was supposed to be kind of like writing through another character about my own experiences, if that makes sense. Almost like a diary entry, but I'm writing it as if it's from another character's perspective to kind of give myself some distance from some of the things I've been going through. And, you know, that can kind of help you get a perspective on it. You know, like I remember, like one of my favorite singers of all time is Aurora. And I remember I was watching an interview, and the interviewer had asked her why all of her songs are in English instead of her native language of Norwegian. And she said something along the lines of writing the songs in a language that's not her own kind of gives her some distance from it, so it doesn't feel quite as strong about herself. And I kind of feel that same way, or I kind of felt that same way when I was writing today. Like I'm giving myself some distance from these events. It started out more fiction, but then I started basically writing this long form essay. And then I started thinking about the New Yorker, because I read a couple of stories from the New Yorker the past week or so. Mainly stories by Haruki Murakami, which, you know, I'm reading Dance 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 by him, and I'm like a little past halfway through it. And I don't know if you've ever read this book before, but the middle section is kind of giving me like some creepy vibes. Creepy like, oh, I hope that's not what this story is about, because I'm really gonna hate it if it is. It's really just one particular element of the story that's kind of like, no. I'm inspired by kind of his writing style in the book, and so I was also kind of trying to do something similar to that. And I just, the more that I wrote, the more I was writing about myself. And I started listening to Aurora, particularly her album Infections of a Different Kind. And that album, for some reason, really resonates with me. Like, I listen to it and it just feels super cathartic. You know, it feels like she's singing to my soul. Like, the songs just feel relevant to my life, and, you know, and so I was listening to it on my drive home, and I started crying like while I was driving. And I hate crying, especially while I'm driving, because, you know, it's hard to see. But this was like the first time I've ever cried while I was driving, because yes, I have done that before, where I actually let myself cry. And I was just like, oh, it's okay, as long as I can see. And I just blinked it away. And then, but I was just like so into it, and I was like dancing, like I was actually physically dancing to the point where I had to make sure I was keeping the car straight. Needless to say, this whole afternoon and evening has been a very cathartic experience. But at the end of the day, quite literally at the end of the day, because it's now after 8 p.m., it feels as though I still don't have any answers, you know, like I'm writing about things that I'm going through, and, you know, basically trying to find a solution. And I still feel, I mixed up my vowel sounds there, as though I have not found the answer that I need. You know, it's like I'm just going back in circles. It's like I know what I want to do, but then there's what I should do. But does what I should do even matter, or should I just do what I want to do? But then if I do just what I want to do, then it makes me sort of feel like irresponsible and like I should have a plan. And then I start thinking about having a plan, and how, you know, when you have a plan to do something, it's supposed to make you feel kind of like you've got yourself together. It's having a plan is supposed to make you feel like you're more certain about what you're doing and where you're going. You know, it's supposed to make you feel more sure, so you're not just kind of like bumbling along blindly. But in this particular situation that I'm in, having a plan makes me feel more lost than anything. You know, it makes me feel kind of like I don't know what I'm doing. And the more that I think I should have a plan, and the more that I think about sticking to this plan, the more I start to doubt myself and my decisions, and the more I start to just go in circles, and I end up right back where I started without really having figured out anything else except that the current situation is not working for me. You know what I mean? You know, it's fun being 24 years old. I've only been 24 for less than a month, but it's fun. It's been a great month so far. You know, it started off great. You know, I was spending my birthday with my dad, because we have the same birthday, which is one of my favorite things in the world. And that was a good day. And the day after that was a good day. But the moment I came back home, you know, it's like back to reality. So, not crying. It's like back to reality. And you suddenly, you're thrown back into everything that you were feeling before. And you realize that it hasn't gotten better. It hasn't necessarily gotten worse either. I've just become more unsure. I feel like I'm living for somebody else right now instead of living for myself. You know? And like being in your 20s is supposed to be this time in your life where you explore and you do things and you learn, you know, and you're naive, but you're also learning from your experiences. But there's something like, I don't know, so like precious about that, being naive, you know, like you don't know, you don't think through all the options, or you're optimistic because you you think that things will turn out the way you want, you know? And on one hand, you know, you're not supposed to be that because that's frowned upon. You're supposed to have a plan. You're supposed to be smart. But on the other hand, it's like, I'm still living for somebody else. This is the point. You fancy me mad. Madman know nothing. I don't know. That's not what I meant to say. I just started saying this is the point, and that's the Edgar Allan quote I thought of. Anyway, but this is the point, I guess, where I have said everything that I need to say, or everything that I can think of to say. And if I keep talking, I'll start rambling. Again, I don't know what to do, you know? I wrote all of that. I drove home and cried and danced and sang at the top of my lungs. I came here and I sat and cried in front of this video camera. And I still don't know what to do, you know? So yeah. Wow.